Hello again, people. You might have seen that I changed the angle. It's just my heat's on this side, so I decided to do some work here. Some of the other things that you're going to have to do for Wednesday class include 1-point perspective and doing perfect cubes. So I'm going to do a very quick overview of what 1-point perspective is, which I think you probably saw already, and then we'll jump on doing the cubes. Okay, so first thing that I want you guys to do is take a look at what I'm gonna do. Again, I apologize for everything being upside down on your screen. There we go. Okay, so 1-point perspective. First, let's get an idea of what perspective is. Okay, so let's imagine that we are in a field and we look at the horizon. So that horizon is probably going to be a line like this, right? We would probably have trees, maybe a little house somewhere, I don't know. But this is what we call a horizon line, okay? Imagine that in the center of this horizon, there is a road. And that is where we, the observer, are standing at that moment, right? Imagine like this is your head and you're looking in that direction. Okay, so when we have, for example, let's imagine that there is a box right on the ground of this road. Okay, before we continue with the box, let's think about something. Okay, so this is a road and goes into the infinite horizon, so that's why we always look like these two lines are converging into that point, right? This point is called a vanishing point. So even though in real life these lines are parallel, there is always the same distance. Like if we were to measure the road here, it probably like, I don't know, 3 yards. But if we measured it here, it would still be 3 yards. But where our eyes, we look at it, so it starts converging to that vanishing point. Vanishing point is a term that we're going to be using a lot. Okay, so now coming back to the box, we have this box here. Now, since it's below the horizon line, we're going to see a little bit of the top of that box. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice a little bit of the dot and crossing with a line, and I'm going to send straight lines to touch those corners of my box. Okay, and I can also do the bottom ones. Okay, we need to make sure that these lines are as straight as they get, because if not, we'll get in trouble. Okay, so now what I need to do is decide how deep this, how long this box is. So let's say that the box ends here, right? So in this case, I am looking at that box going to the distance. Okay, I'm not doing a great job at it, apparently. Okay, notice how I am trying to get all these lines darker than the construction lines that I was using for the vanishing point. Okay, because what I'm interested in here is in seeing that box, not necessarily seeing all those lines that I am using to create this. Okay, so since the box is below the horizon line, we see a little bit of the top and we see the front. Okay, what if I took this box and I just moved it in that direction? Okay, so I'm not rotating the box in any way, I'm just displacing it through this direction. So what I could do is I could, for example, just prolong these lines and create the box here. So take note that we're still looking at the perfect front of that box. Okay, another name for 1-point perspective is parallel perspective, and the reason is that our horizontal lines are parallel always, as well as our vertical lines. So it doesn't matter, for example, let's make this box a little taller. If I put this box here, or if I have a box, let's say, over here, farther into the distance, right? All my vertical lines are going to be parallel to each other, as well as all my horizontal lines. So like we did in this box, what we're going to do right now is, well, first get those lines that we care about to be a little bit more visible, and then get all our corners to go to the vanishing point. Okay, so again, I can practice before I do the line. my eye looks at where I want to go, not necessarily follows what I'm doing. Okay, so we try that one more time, and missing a little bit since I didn't warm up, so I hope you guys warm up before. Okay, so here we go, and I decide how long that box is going to be. Okay, now I know all my verticals are parallel and all my horizontals are parallel, so what I can do here is I can just like try to create these parallel lines, and ideally these lines should match, this point should match. If they don't match, it's probably because these lines are not straight, they're slightly curved, so they're making a little bit of a mess. Now, other things that when we're making these lines darker, another thing you can think about is, for example, this box is touching the ground, so there's something that's called a contact shadow. If I put my hand here, you're going to notice that there's a very defined dark line, which is the contact shadow. So we're always going to make dark, very dark lines at the bottom of stuff that's touching the ground. Okay. And then we get these lines to be a little bit more visible than my construction lines. Okay, and here I have a box. What happens if I get a box here on the top, right? I'm going to look to be able to see the front side, the bottom side, and the left side. And this one I get to see all these three faces of the box. Right? It's important to see everything that's above the horizon line and it's above eye level. We'll get to see the bottom up. So it depends whenever you're drawing a product, depending on the view that you want to get, that's what you're gonna get. Get that? And then again, doing parallel lines, vertical lines, parallel horizontals and parallel verticals, that always happens. And then I'm here getting my box more visible. I'm also emphasizing a little bit of the contour so that it breaks it from the space of the white page. Okay, so there we have it. And I'm imagining that all these boxes are transparent, so I am practicing like the lines, even though they're invisible because they're in the back of it. That's what I'm going to be doing, looking at. So our first challenge, now that you have 1 point perspective figured out, is going to be making cubes. And this is where we're going to start using our very thins and our Prismacolors. Okay, so you were required to bring two tools, a very thin and a wax Prismacolor as well. Okay, so the difference is that the very thin is very hard. This is in equivalence, it would be like an H pencil, graphite pencil. It will allow us to do very precise lines, but it's not going to let us to do very dark lines compared to this one that will wear out more quickly, but will let us do darker lines. So I have some cubes that I had already started here. You'll notice, for example, that this cube looks more like a perfect cube than this one. This one looks a little long. Okay, so we're gonna try that. Our challenge is precisely to get those cubes to be perfect cubes. It sounds easier than it actually is, so bear with me. What I did is I put a vanishing point in the center of my page and I started radiating lines. You can do that, or you can actually start with your box. Okay, so I'm going to do my parallel lines. I want all of the cubes to have parallel vertical lines and parallel horizontal lines, which is the nature of this perspective. Okay, so then I take those points, those corners to the vanishing point. Notice that I'm using my very thin, which is the harder tool, just because I want to get a lot of very precise lines, and I want them to be super light. Although we can get dark lines, we can also get like practically invisible lines, which are the ones that I'm using right now because these are construction lines. Okay, so how do I make a perfect cube? One suggestion that I have is, provided this is an acute angle at this area, I could actually break it into two equal angles. I mean, this side and that side should be equal, and do a diagonal line there, breaking that. So where it hits, I can get a vertical, and that's when I can start getting my other lines, and ideally this should be a perfect cube. If it looks slightly long, then what I would do is I would just like correct it on the go. But let's get that sensitivity of getting a perfect cube going. Let me just explain this a little bit more. Also, if you want to do a perfect square, maybe here, okay, you make sure these two are 90 degrees. Then you break this into two 45-degree angles, just to the half. And then when you throw the next horizontal, that where it hit, you should be able to make a perfect square. Okay, so now that I am projecting my points to the vanishing point, the next goal is to make these guys stand out a little bit more, right? And I want, let's talk about 2 or 3 levels of lines that I'm going to be requiring. Of course, I need to see your construction lines going to the vanishing point, but I also want to see the back, like the invisible lines for this cube, and I want to see the visible lines. So I think the visible lines of the cube are going to be the darkest one. Okay, so I'm going to take now my Prismacolor. I'm going to make my lines darker, so this stands out from all of the other lines. You'll notice as I draw that when I do a line, I also kind of rotate the pencil like this. This keeps the tip sharp for longer, because it's very important throughout all the process. The tip of your very thin and the tip of your Prismacolor are always very sharp. So you're going to do a lot of pencil sharpening. Let's go here, identify my next point. Okay, I do that, then I can go do my verticals. And you can do also lines that are thicker, not only darker. Okay, so there we go. Now I want to get my visible lines for my cube. And there we go, and I don't want to forget my invisible lines at the back. Okay, so this would be my cube. And what you're going to do is you're going to practice this perspective. You're going to make a bunch of cubes. I want you guys to make, for next class, 5 pages with 10 cubes on them. Okay, so that's practice, because next class we're going to start doing 2-point perspective, and I want you guys to be proficient in this, so that you just get there and start asking your questions, and we can clarify everything. Okay, so that's what I want you guys to do. 5 pages with 10 cubes. Another method you can use to make cubes, if you are tired of putting like your vanishing point there and irradiating stuff, is that you can actually, let's use the back of this. Imagine that your vanishing point is actually far away. Okay, well outside of your page. So what are you going to do? Let's say that I can start by doing the actual square for my cube. There it is. And then I can send my corners into, just like have them converge at some point. Now this is tricky because I want to make sure that they look like they're converging into the same point. For example, you have one like that, that one's not converging anywhere. Okay, so we have to be careful with that, but that way I could, I don't know, let's split this in 2, and that's where it's going to be a little thinner actually, to make that perfect cube. And then I do my horizontal that are parallel to each other, and I join this. Okay, and then I would do just my darkening of these areas, but that's something you can do. I recommend that you start with this guy first, but as we go into the drawings, we'll practice this one. Just another thing you can do is just do a bunch of converging lines. I'm sure they're converging to the same spot, and then I just start like finding verticals. Let's say that this is going to be my square. So now I do my horizontals, I found my square, and then with all these lines as reference, I can just like start finding where these points are going to go. Whatever techniques works for you, that's what you're going to use. Okay, I think that if you feel a little bit insecure with that, you do start with this technique. Okay, 5 pages, 10 cubes. You can change sizes. You can just like explore whatever you want to do. Okay. Okay, don't forget, bring them so we can check them, and I can tell you, like if you did some things that are not really good, I can tell you where you made mistakes and we can fix them. Okay, so far, so good. See ya.